Okie dokie. The one thing I've been hearing for Barbarian is that it's another movie that you should just go into knowing nothing, which I do agree with. It was definitely an experience watching it unfold in front of me. The only thing I knew about this is that it's a horror movie about an Airbnb with a creepy roommate. That's all I knew going in, and coming out, wow, I don't know how I can even talk about this, but let's do it anyway. If you don't know, you really don't want to know that much about the movie, so I'll explain it anyway. A young woman drives up to an Airbnb in the pouring night rain, ready to just get inside and sleep before her big day tomorrow. Unfortunately, the key is nowhere to be found, the lockbox as empty as her hopes for a decent rest. Suddenly, a light inside turns on, and a man steps out of her rental. After some deliberation, they discover they've both been booked into the same one-bedroom house, and with nowhere else to go, our main character decides to step in to spend the night, letting the door slowly close behind her. I wish there was a way to capture the atmosphere from the movie in that small little synopsis. My writing is nowhere near that good, and it makes me all the more appreciative of how well this movie was able to absorb you into the story. There's this constant sense of anticipation, always waiting to see things take a turn for the worse. It takes a realistic and already unsettling situation, staying the night with a random stranger, and lets us stew in this uncomfortable idea of not knowing the intentions of the person sleeping within your vicinity. Bill Skarsgård does such a good job of selling the creepy roommate. It's almost comical at how hard this character is trying to not appear alarming in any way. And I'm left wondering whether it's okay to believe in him or not. Women are taught to be distrusting of men, no matter how much people try to sell the notion that we're not like other men. You're always having to try and decipher how genuine that actually is. Is this a good, well-meaning person, or am I going to be pushed down and forced to live with a traumatic experience for the rest of my life? This awful guesswork is captured so well in this movie, and it's only a single element in a larger narrative. It's funny because I made a complaint about my last movie review, Black Adam, where the movie felt like it ended halfway through and restarted, and the next movie I watched does something similar. It actually does it a couple of times, but it's handled so much better in Barbarian. For one, instead of feeling like an ending, the story just gets cut, and we're met with this jarring feeling of starting a brand new story. We're left unsatisfied because we want to know what happened to our previous protagonist. You can't just move on like nothing happened. We now want to know more, and we continue to let ourselves to be absorbed into this story. The other reason is that it actually ties everything back together really well. There's an actual purpose to having these separate stories play out in this nature because it's helping us understand the mystery that is being unwrapped in front of us. In Black Adam, the only reason the ending and restart are in the movie is for a poor attempt at a fake out and a segue into more action. In Barbarian, we're slowly learning the terrible truth behind the monsters that lie within this house, our intrigue being rewarded with a compelling and terrifying story. There's some great shots in this movie as well. The cinematography lends so well in crafting the atmosphere. There's a few pull-out shots in this movie, which is just the camera pulling away from what it's filming. I looked it up just now to sound smart. These are used to make the house seem bigger than it actually is. In reality, I imagine it's actually quite cramped, but the movie portrays it as if we're stepping into the unknown, unsure of the unfamiliar environment that we're heading into. It's like it's trying to hide something that, if we turn around this very instant, we're going to be met with something awful, something we would rather keep our backs to. There's also quite a lot of static moments, a lot of these involving hallways. The camera is placed on one end, with our characters moving on the other side. They feel small, moving between one door and another, exploring the Airbnb and discovering every nook and crevice of this quaint little house. It adds to the feeling that this house is much bigger than it actually is, and it's honestly an amazing showcase of what's to come, considering this movie in its entirety. Now, there is this small aspect of this movie that I felt like I should talk about. It's something that you see in a lot of horror movies, and it's the suspension of disbelief. We need to be able to believe that something can actually happen to have us immerse ourselves into the horror. But there are some moments that make us go, eh? One example would be the police. Unlike other movies, they actually do get called whenever our characters feel like there is something wrong, most of the time, but they're not entirely helpful, which makes sense. We don't want them to end the movie prematurely, but they're really unwilling to even give them the time of day, which honestly, reconsidering, maybe American police are just not all that reliable. It definitely seems that way from what you see in the news these days, and I myself haven't interacted with the police enough to know how well they would treat me down under. But it does feel weird to see them mostly refuse to just listen to a clearly distressed individual. If we do ignore that part, our main characters do seem to be somewhat okay with stepping into a clearly bad situation. I'm sorry, but I don't care what's happening right now. I am leaving and I'm going to let the officials deal with this mess. Although given their track record, maybe I'll just be running away with my tail between my legs. It's generally funny in some aspects though, especially when we meet AJ. The way he reacts to discovering the big secret is honestly really funny. It's simultaneously a really nice break from the fear, and also, for the love of all that is holy, leave that house already! Get out! Please, just get out! Barbarian was a pretty fun watch. I admit I actually had my expectations for this movie to head in a different direction, and while I'm pleasantly surprised with how it actually turned out, I do want to see a movie that takes the approach that I was expecting. This is in no way a negative for the movie. Barbarian was great, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone that wishes to see it for themselves. If you want me to spend the night in an Airbnb with a suspicious stranger, let me know in the comments below and tell me your thoughts while you're down there. Like and subscribe for more content, let me know if there's something you'd like me to cover. I like to talk about anything that interests me. That's all I want to say. I hope you all have a good day.